At 15, I thought I knew what betrayal looked like. I thought it was the big stuff. Cheating, lying, the kind of shocking revelations you see in movies. But the truth? The real truth that no one tells you? Betrayal is your own mother choosing to believe a lie over you. It's being kicked out into a storm, literally rain pouring, thunder cracking the sky, because someone lied and she didn't even pause to ask your side. I couldn't believe it was happening. 1 minute I was her daughter. The next, I was standing on the porch with a garbage bag of clothes, watching the door lock behind me. 15 years old, nowhere to go. And the worst part? She had no idea that get out would turn into something she'd regret for the rest of her life. Because what happened next wasn't just me surviving. It was me thriving, while everything she thought she knew crumbled. They say karma's a patient teacher. Turns out, she's also extremely thorough. And this is the story of how a teenage girl humiliated in the rain became the woman who rebuilt herself from nothing and left behind a mother who finally understood the cost of choosing lies over love. You think you've been betrayed? Just wait until you hear how deep this goes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mom stood at the door of my home office, my office, with this casual smile like she was asking me to pass the salt. "Bella, honey, we need this room for Jason's new recording studio. You can work from your bedroom, right?" Just like that. No discussion. No, "What do you think?" Just decided. I felt something crack inside me, this hot wave of humiliation that made my hands shake. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just said, "Okay." And in that moment, something shifted, because that okay wasn't agreement. It was the sound of a door closing. I started looking at apartments that same night, scrolling through listings in Brooklyn, while they measured my space for his dream. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to clarity. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't always come with a slap. Sometimes it's wrapped in family love, in, "We're all in this together," in the assumption that you'll just bend. Jason had always been the golden child, the creative one, the boy with big dreams who needed support. I was the responsible one, the one with the stable job and the good head on her shoulders, which apparently translated to the one whose needs don't matter. They'd been doing this my whole life, treating my space, my time, my money like communal property. But this? Kicking me out of the room I'd painted, furnished, and worked in for 3 years so my 26-year-old brother could chase influencer fame? That was the line. And I'd already crossed it in my head. I didn't tell them what I was planning. Why would I? They'd gaslight me into staying, tell me I was overreacting, remind me that family helps family. So I played along. I smiled. I moved my desk into my bedroom, like the good daughter I'd always been. But every night, I was on Craigslist, on StreetEasy, emailing landlords, calculating deposits. I had this weird calm, like I was planning a heist. Pack the important stuff first. Documents. Laptop. The things that proved I existed as a person, not just a paycheck. I started moving small items to a friend's place. Books, winter clothes, things they wouldn't notice missing. And the whole time, my mom and Jason were laughing in my old office, setting up ring lights and microphones, completely unaware that the foundation was crumbling. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I'd been holding this house together financially for over a year. The upgraded internet so Jason could stream without lag? Me. His Adobe subscription? Me. The Spotify family plan? The Netflix? The food delivery apps when everyone was too busy to cook? All me. I wasn't just the responsible daughter. I was the ATM, the invisible infrastructure. And I'd been so conditioned to say yes, to smooth things over, to keep the peace, that I didn't even realize I was being used. But something about watching them rearrange furniture in the space where I used to work, where I used to feel like I mattered, finally woke me up. Revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be mathematical. I found a studio in Queens. Small, but mine. The landlord wanted first, last, and security. $4,200 total. I had it. I'd been saving without even knowing what for, stashing away money every month like I was preparing for an escape I hadn't yet admitted I needed. I signed the lease on a Tuesday. Move-in date, 2 weeks. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept showing up to family dinners, kept smiling, kept letting them think everything was fine. My mom even asked me to Venmo her $200 for Jason's new camera lens, and I did it without a word, because I knew. I knew that in 14 days, every single automatic payment tied to my name was going to stop, and I wanted them to feel safe right up until the floor disappeared. The hardest part wasn't the planning. It wasn't even the money. It was the silence. Sitting at the dinner table, listening to Jason talk about his content strategy, and my mom bragging about his follower count, knowing that I was about to pull the rug out from under all of it. There's this thing that happens when you've been the scapegoat for so long. You start to feel guilty for wanting dignity, like wanting to be seen, to be valued, to be treated like a human instead of a resource, is selfish. But I was done apologizing for taking up space. I was done being the backbone of a family that only noticed me when I wasn't holding them up. And when I finally left, they were going to learn what it felt like to stand on their own, or fall. Honestly, I didn't care which. Growing up, there was always this unspoken rule in our house. Jason was special, and I was useful. He was the dreamer, the sensitive artist who needed protection from the harsh world. I was the pragmatic one, the girl who didn't need as much attention because I had my life together. Except I was 12 when they started saying that. 12. And what they really meant was, Jason gets exceptions and you get expectations. When he failed a class, it was because the teacher didn't understand creative minds. When I got a B, it was disappointing. He got chances. I got responsibilities. And somehow, without anyone ever saying it out loud, I became the solution to every problem in that house, while he became the problem everyone worked around. The pattern was so old it felt like furniture. Jason wanted to skip college to find himself supported. I wanted to take a gap year to travel. That's not practical, Bella. You're too smart for that. He moved back home at 23 after his startup failed. He just needs time to regroup. I asked to stay an extra year after graduation to save money. You're an adult now. Time to be independent. The rules bent for him like he was made of light, and they locked around me like chains. I watched it happen over and over. Watched my parents drain their savings for his business ideas, while I paid my own student loans. Watched them cancel plans with me to drive him to networking events. Watched them celebrate his mediocrity like genius, while my actual accomplishments barely earned a nod. But here's the thing about being the responsible child. You become invisible. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're doing everything right. You don't cause problems, so you don't get attention. You don't ask for help, so nobody offers. And eventually, your family starts to believe that you don't need anything, that you're just naturally capable of carrying weight while everyone else gets to be fragile. I became the person they called when something broke, when bills were tight, when Jason needed just a small loan that was never paid back. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was infrastructure. I was the reliable one. And the betrayal wasn't just that they used me, it was that they convinced me it was love. Money was always the clearest measure of the imbalance, but it took me years to see it. Jason's photography equipment? $3,000 from our parents, plus another $800 I lent him that vanished into the void. His trip to LA for a creator conference? Funded. My certification program for work? Can't you get your company to pay for that? When I started working from home, I paid for the faster internet because you need it for your job anyway, and it helps all of us. I bought the family Spotify account because I already had one. I covered groceries, Ubers, takeout, streaming services, all these little expenses that seemed insignificant alone, but added up to hundreds every month, and nobody noticed. Or worse, they noticed and just didn't care, because I was Bella. I handled things. That's what I did. The office thing wasn't even the first time they'd taken my space for him. When we were teenagers, he got the bigger bedroom because he needed room for his art supplies. I got the converted den with no closet. When I bought my first car, they borrowed it so often for Jason's errands that I started taking the bus to work. When I mentioned feeling overlooked, my mom said, "You're so independent, Bella. You don't need us the way he does." And I believed her. I actually believed that needing less made me worth less, that being strong meant I didn't deserve softness. So I kept giving, kept bending, kept pretending it didn't hurt every time they chose him over me, until the day they literally shoved me out of my own workspace, and something inside me finally said, enough. What nobody tells you about family betrayal is that it's not one big moment. It's 1,000 small cuts, each one barely deep enough to bleed, but together they drain you. It's your brother getting a standing ovation for posting a video while you close a 6-figure deal and get a distracted, "That's nice, honey." It's paying for dinner and having your mom ask if you can also cover Jason's Uber home. It's watching them plan his future while treating yours like it's already handled. And the worst part? You can't even be angry without looking petty, because they'll say you're jealous. They'll say he needs more support. They'll make you the villain for wanting an ounce of what he gets by default. So you swallow it. You smile, and you start planning your escape in secret, knowing that the only justice you'll ever get is the kind you build yourself. It started so small I didn't even notice it was happening. Bella, can you add me to your Spotify? You're already paying for it anyway. Hey, since you upgraded the Wi-Fi for work, we might as well all use it, right? Little requests that seemed reasonable, even generous on my part. I was making good money. I could afford it. And isn't that what family does? Share resources? Except sharing implies reciprocity, and there was never any of that. It was always my paycheck stretching to cover their comfort, my subscriptions keeping their lives running smooth, my credit card catching every emergency that popped up. I became the financial safety net without ever agreeing to the job, and the worst part is, I didn't realize I was being exploited because they wrapped it in love. You're so good to us, Bella. Yeah, I was. 6 months before they took my office, I started tracking my expenses. Not because I suspected anything, I just wanted to budget better, be smarter with money. And that's when I saw it. The numbers didn't lie. I was spending an extra $1,400 to $1,800 every single month on things that had nothing to do with me. Jason's graphic design software subscription, $52.99 monthly, billed to my card. The upgraded internet package that only he needed for streaming, $89 a month my account. His Uber Eats habit because he couldn't focus on creative work and cook, averaging $300 a month, and somehow I was always the one he asked to Venmo. Family phone plan? Me. Gym membership he used twice? Me. That course on personal branding he never finished? $497. One-time payment. My credit card. I wasn't contributing to the household. I was the household. The really sick part? They acted like I was doing nothing. My mom would complain about money being tight, about how hard it was to keep up with bills, while sitting on the couch watching Netflix on my account, scrolling through Spotify playlists I paid for, using internet I funded. Jason would post about investing in yourself and betting on your dreams, while I bankrolled every single one of those bets. And when I worked late, when I was actually earning the money that kept their world spinning, they got annoyed. You're always busy, Bella. Can't you just relax? Relax with what money exactly? The money I wasn't spending on myself because it was all going to them? The injustice of it made me feel crazy, like I was the problem for noticing. I started screenshotting everything. Every Venmo request. Every, "Can you cover this real quick?" text. Every auto payment confirmation email. I created a folder on my phone labeled Receipts and watched it grow. $1,650 in January. $1,890 in February. $1,720 in March. I wasn't just supporting myself. I was financially carrying 2 fully grown adults who somehow believed they were struggling while I subsidized their entire existence. And the gaslighting was insane. When I mentioned that I'd covered Jason's equipment, my mom said, "Well, you offered." When I brought up the internet bill, she said, "You use it too." When I asked about the $200 I'd sent for groceries that somehow became beer and vape pods, she looked at me like I was being petty. It's just money, Bella. Family doesn't keep score. But I was keeping score now, because I finally understood what was happening. This wasn't love. This wasn't family taking care of each other. This was financial abuse dressed up in holiday dinners and "we're so proud of you" texts that never came with actual respect. I was being used as a resource, mined for cash and convenience, and the second I stopped producing, I'd be worthless to them. They didn't see me as a daughter or a sister. They saw me as an ATM with a heartbeat, and the rage I felt wasn't hot. It was cold, calculated, because I realized that the only language they'd ever understand was loss. They didn't value my presence, but they were about to learn the cost of my absence. I did the math one night, sitting in my bedroom, the bedroom I'd been shoved into so Jason could have my office, and I calculated 12 months of expenses, $18,600, $18,600. That's what I'd spent keeping their lives comfortable while they treated mine like an afterthought. I stared at that number until it stopped feeling like money and started feeling like proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that I wasn't selfish for wanting out. Proof that when I finally left, when I cut every single cord tied to my bank account, the chaos that followed wouldn't be my fault. It would be karma. And I was going to make sure they felt every dollar of it. The apartment in Queens wasn't much. 480 square feet, 5th floor walk-up, a radiator that clanged like it had ghosts trapped inside. But it was mine. The landlord didn't ask questions, just ran my credit, nodded at my references, and handed me the keys with a handshake that felt like freedom. Move-in date, October 15th, 2 weeks away. I signed the lease in my car, hands trembling, then drove home and walked into that house like nothing had changed. My mom was making dinner. Jason was editing a video in my office. And I smiled. I set the table. I asked about their day. Because the best revenge isn't the kind they see coming. It's the kind that hits when they're not even looking. I started moving things out slowly, surgically, like I was dismantling a bomb. A box of books to my friend Rachel's place. Winter clothes I didn't need yet to a storage unit I rented under a fake sense of spring cleaning. My important documents, birth certificate, passport, tax returns, went into a fireproof bag that lived in my trunk. Every night, I'd pack something small. A photo album. My good headphones. The jewelry box my grandmother gave me. Things they wouldn't notice missing because they never noticed me to begin with. And it felt powerful, this quiet rebellion. Every item I removed was a piece of myself I was taking back. I wasn't running away. I was excavating my life from the wreckage of theirs. The hardest part was saying no for the first time in my life, and making it look like yes. Bella, can you Venmo me $150 for that lighting kit? Sure, Jason. Last time. Honey, can you grab groceries on your way home? Of course, Mom. Final run. I played the role so well they didn't suspect a thing. I even helped Jason set up his new microphone stand, the one they bought with money they didn't have, in the office that used to be mine. I smiled through every humiliation because I knew it had an expiration date. October 15th. 14 days. 13. 12. I was counting down like a prisoner marking walls, and the freedom waiting on the other side made every fake smile worth it. I made lists. God, the lists. Everything connected to my name. Every bill on autopay. Every subscription. Every shared account. I wanted to know exactly what would collapse when I pulled the plug. Internet, mine. Phone plan, mine. Streaming services, mine. Cloud storage where Jason kept all his precious video files, mine. Even the Costco membership they used weekly, mine. I wasn't just leaving. I was withdrawing life support. And I built a spreadsheet tracking every single expense I'd covered in the past year, color-coded by category, totaled at the bottom in bold red numbers, $18,600. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew it was proof. Evidence. The receipts they said family didn't keep. 3 days before the move, I rented a U-Haul. The guy at the counter asked if I needed help loading, and I almost laughed. No, I said. I've got it handled. Because I did. I'd been handling everything my whole life. Their problems, their bills, their emotions, their dreams. I'd carried that family on my back for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. But I was about to remember. I scheduled the truck for Saturday morning, 8 a.m. They'd still be asleep. Jason never woke up before noon on weekends, and my mom would be doing her yoga routine in the living room, oblivious. I'd be gone before they even noticed I was packing. and by the time they realized what was happening, I'd already be free. The night before I left, I sat in my bedroom, the room I'd been exiled to, the room that was never supposed to be mine, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness. Not yet. But peace. The kind that comes from knowing you're about to stop betraying yourself. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just done. Done explaining. Done justifying my existence. Done lighting myself on fire to keep people warm who wouldn't even piss on me if I was burning. Tomorrow, I'd load my life into a truck. Tomorrow, I'd leave a note on the fridge. Tomorrow, they'd wake up to a house that finally reflected what they'd always treated me as. Gone. And I couldn't wait to see what crumbled without me there to hold it together. I came home from work on a Wednesday, and my chair was gone. Not moved. Gone. The ergonomic office chair I'd bought with my own money after my back started screaming from hunching over a laptop in bed. The one I'd spent $340 on because I worked 10-hour days and needed something that wouldn't cripple me by 30. I stood in the doorway of Jason's new studio, my old office, and stared at the empty space where it used to be. He was sitting in it, recording a podcast nobody would listen to, wearing headphones I probably paid for, completely oblivious. And when I asked where my chair went, my mom answered from the hallway like it was the most casual thing in the world. Oh, we sold it. Jason needed a better mic, and that chair was just sitting there anyway. Just sitting there. Like it wasn't mine. Like I hadn't specifically bought it for my body, my work, my pain. She said it so casually, like she'd rearranged throw pillows, not sold my property without asking. And Jason? He didn't even look up. Just kept talking into his new microphone, the one they bought with my chair money, about staying authentic and investing in quality. I felt something snap inside my chest, this white-hot crack of rage that I'd been swallowing for weeks. Years, maybe. They didn't just take my space. They took my things, sold them, liquidated my dignity for his hobby. And they genuinely didn't think they'd done anything wrong. That's when I knew. Talking wouldn't fix this. Only math would. I went to my room, the room they'd shoved me into, and I pulled up that spreadsheet. Every receipt, every transaction, every Venmo request I'd been documenting like evidence at a crime scene. I printed it. All of it. 6 pages of highlighted charges, categorized by month, annotated with screenshots. Internet, 89 month. Subscriptions, 167 month. Jason's equipment, $847 total. Emergency money, $1,240 over 6 months. Food delivery charged to my card, $3,100 in a year. The chair they just sold without asking, $340, highlighted in yellow with a note. Sold without permission. Theft. I paperclipped it together, hands shaking, and I walked back downstairs. This wasn't a conversation anymore. This was a reckoning. I dropped the stack on the kitchen table during dinner. My mom looked up, confused. Jason kept eating, scrolling his phone. And I said, voice calm as glass, I'm moving out Saturday. This is everything I've paid for in the last 12 months that had nothing to do with me. The total is $18,600 in case you're wondering. I won't be covering any of it anymore. The silence was deafening. My mom's face went white. Bella, what are you... But I cut her off. You sold my chair. You turned my office into his studio. You've treated me like a checking account for over a year, and I'm done. I've already signed a lease. The U-Haul is booked. I'm leaving, and every single bill tied to my name is getting canceled on Monday. Jason finally looked up, and I swear to God he had the audacity to look betrayed. You're seriously gonna screw us over like this? We're family. And I laughed. I actually laughed. This sharp, bitter sound I didn't recognize. Family doesn't sell each other's shit without asking. Family doesn't kick you out of your own workspace. Family doesn't bleed you dry and then act shocked when you stop giving blood. My mom tried the soft approach, the manipulation I'd fallen for 1,000 times. Honey, if you needed space, we could have talked about this. You're overreacting. But I was so far past overreacting I could see it in the rearview mirror. I slid the papers across the table. Read it, do the math, then tell me I'm overreacting. They didn't read it that night. They argued, deflected, cried, accused. My mom said I was being cruel. Jason said I was jealous of his success. They threw every card they had, every guilt trip, every gaslighting phrase in the manual, but I'd already moved past them emotionally. I was 3 days away from freedom, and nothing they said could pull me back. I went upstairs, locked my door, and finished packing. And when I woke up Saturday morning at 6 a.m., the house was still silent. I loaded the U-Haul piece by piece, box by box, wiping my existence from that place like I was erasing a mistake. And before I left, I taped one final copy of the spreadsheet to the fridge with a sticky note on top. This is what it cost to be your safety net. I'm done paying. Then I drove away. The U-Haul felt bigger than it needed to be. This huge orange beast parked in front of a house that suddenly looked smaller. I started loading at 7 a.m., and the neighborhood was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Every box I carried felt lighter than it should have, like I'd been holding on to weight for so long that letting go made me float. My desk, my books, my clothes, the little things that made a room mine. I moved methodically, no hesitation, no second guessing. This wasn't sad. This was surgical. I wasn't losing a home. I was amputating a disease. And with every trip from the house to the truck, I felt something return to me that I didn't even know I'd lost. My fucking self-worth. Inside, I left almost nothing behind. The furniture they'd bought? Gone. The decorations I'd put up? Packed. The kitchen supplies I'd replaced when theirs broke? Loaded. I took everything that mattered and left only the bones. Bare walls, empty drawers, the ghost of a person who used to live there. And on the kitchen counter, right next to the coffee maker they'd used every morning without ever thinking about who bought the coffee, I left a manila envelope. Inside, another copy of the spreadsheet, printed in full color this time, with the total circled in red Sharpie, $18,600, and a single sheet of paper, handwritten, that said, "I paid for your comfort. You paid for nothing. From now on, figure it out yourselves. Bella." I didn't sign it with love. They hadn't earned that. The note on the fridge was the final touch, the petty justice I couldn't resist. I used one of those big neon sticky notes, impossible to miss, and wrote in block letters, "Internet canceled Monday. Phone plan canceled Monday. All subscriptions tied to my name. Canceled. You're welcome for the year of free rides. Good luck." I stuck it right over the grocery list my mom had written, the one that included things she expected me to pick up. Not anymore. Never again. I stood there for a second, staring at that bright pink square of vindication, and I smiled. Not a happy smile, a sharp one. The kind that comes when you finally stop playing nice with people who never deserved your kindness. Loading the truck took 2 hours. No one woke up. Jason's door stayed closed, bass thumping faintly from whatever he was listening to in his sleep. My mom's alarm wouldn't go off for another hour. I could have said goodbye, could have hugged them, softened the blow, left on good terms. But good terms would have been a lie, and I was done lying to keep the peace. They'd stolen my peace, sold it for a microphone, and called it family love. So I gave them silence instead. I gave them the same absence of consideration they'd given me for years. And when I backed that U-Haul out of the driveway, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind me worth seeing. The drive to Queens felt like crossing a border into a country that didn't know my name yet. The city looked different in the morning light. Sharper, cleaner, full of possibility. I parked outside my new building, this narrow brick walk-up with a bodega on the corner and a dog barking somewhere overhead. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't big. But when I opened the door with my own key, stepped into that empty studio with scratched floors and a window that overlooked the fire escape, I felt something I hadn't felt in that house in years. Safe. Safe from their needs. Safe from their expectations. Safe from the version of myself I'd had to perform just to survive their indifference. I set down the first box and exhaled. This was mine. Every inch, every dollar, every breath. I didn't turn my phone on until everything was unloaded. I knew what would be waiting. Texts, calls, voicemails full of shock and anger and, "How could you do this to us?" but I wanted one clean hour in my new space before the fallout hit. I wanted to sit on my floor, eat takeout I ordered with money I didn't have to justify, and just exist without someone needing something from me. And when I finally powered up my phone and saw 23 missed calls, 47 texts, and a voicemail from my mom that started with, "Bella, what the hell is wrong with you?" I smiled, because it had already started. The collapse, the panic, the realization that I wasn't bluffing. They were about to learn what life cost when I wasn't paying for it. And I was going to watch it all burn from my little studio in Queens, warm and unbothered. The first call came at 9:47 a.m., less than 3 hours after I'd left. My mom. I didn't answer. She called again at 9:51, then 9:58. Then Jason tried. Then her again. By noon, my phone was vibrating so hard it fell off the kitchen counter in my new apartment. I picked it up, scrolled through the notifications, and felt absolutely nothing. 17 missed calls, 32 texts. The messages were a progression of denial, anger, and desperation that would have been funny if it wasn't so predictable. "Bella, call me back right now." Then, "This isn't funny." "Where are you?" Then, "We need to talk about this like adults." And finally, the one that told me everything I needed to know. "How do I log into the Wi-Fi?" They didn't even realize I was gone until the internet stopped working. Sunday morning, less than 24 hours after I'd moved out, the real panic set in. My mom called at 7 a.m., her voice shaking, and I almost felt bad until I remembered the chair. "Bella, please. I don't know what you want me to say. Just come home and we'll figure this out." But I wasn't coming home. That place stopped being home the second they decided I was furniture. I told her, voice flat as pavement. I left instructions on the fridge. "You can handle your own bills now. I'm not your backup plan anymore." She started crying, that manipulative sob she'd used on me 100 times before. But this time, it slid right off. "You're really going to abandon your family over money? After everything we've done for you? Everything they'd done for me?" I laughed. Actually laughed into the phone. Name one thing. One. The silence on the other end was so long I thought she'd hung up. Then Jason grabbed the phone. I could hear them fighting over it, and his voice came through, tight with panic. "Bella, the Netflix isn't working, and I can't access my editing software. And the internet? Did you seriously cancel the internet? I have a video uploading. I have deadlines. I cut him off. "You have a job to get. A real one. Because I'm not funding your influencer fantasy anymore. Figure it out." He exploded. Called me selfish, cruel, jealous of his creativity, every insult he could think of. And I let him. I let him yell himself empty while I sipped coffee in my sunlit studio, surrounded by my things in my space, and when he finally ran out of breath, I said, "I paid $18,000 for you to chase a dream you're not even good at. You're welcome. Don't call me again unless you're ready to pay me back." By Monday, the house was in full meltdown. I'd scheduled every cancellation to hit that morning. Internet, phone plan, streaming services, cloud storage, everything. I imagined them waking up to a digital apocalypse. Wi-Fi down, phones disconnected, Jason's precious video files locked behind a paywall he couldn't afford. My mom sent a long, rambling text about how I was tearing the family apart, how I'd changed, how she didn't raise me to be this cold. And I wrote back, just once. "You didn't raise me at all. You raised a credit card with a heartbeat. I'm done being used." Then I muted the conversation. Not blocked, muted, because I wanted them to know I was seeing their messages and choosing not to care. The voicemails were the worst, or the best, depending on how you looked at it. My mom, sobbing about the heating bill she didn't know how to pay. Jason, frantic about losing a brand deal because he couldn't upload content without internet. Both of them together, tag-teaming me with guilt. "We can't do this without you. Please, we need you." And that's when I knew I'd won. Not because I wanted them to suffer, though I won't lie, there was some satisfaction in it, but because they'd finally said it out loud. They needed me. Not loved, not valued. Needed. Like I was a resource, a utility. And now that the utility was shut off, they were sitting in the dark, cold and confused, finally understanding what I'd been to them all along. Not a daughter, not a sister, just the person who kept the lights on, and I was never flipping that switch again. The day ended with a text from my mom that almost broke me. Almost. "Bella, please. I'm begging you. Just tell us what we did wrong and we'll fix it." I stared at that message for a long time, sitting on my floor with takeout containers around me, and I thought about responding. Thought about explaining, one more time, how they'd used me, humiliated me, betrayed me, but I didn't, because they knew. Deep down, they knew. They just didn't think there'd be consequences. They thought I'd bend forever, and maybe the cruelest thing I could do, crueler than leaving, crueler than cutting them off, was letting them sit in that question, letting them wonder, letting them feel, for once in their lives, what it was like to be ignored. The heating broke on a Tuesday, mid-November, temperatures dropping into the 20s, and their ancient furnace finally gave up like it had been waiting for me to leave before it died. My mom called me 12 times in 2 hours. I was at work, phone face down on my desk, watching it light up with her name over and over like a slot machine paying out desperation. When I finally answered, mostly because my boss was giving me looks, her voice was small and shaking. "Bella, the heat's out. The guy says it'll cost $1,800 to fix, and we don't have it. Jason's freezing. I'm freezing. Please. I know you're angry, but we need help." And for the first time since I'd left, I felt something other than rage. Not sympathy. Not quite. But something close to pity. I didn't say yes right away. I let her sit in the silence. Let her feel what it was like to ask me for something and not get an automatic answer. Then I said, "I'll help you. Once. But we're doing this my way. And if you don't agree to my terms, you can call someone else." She agreed before I even told her what the terms were. That's how desperate she was. So I drove over that night after work, walked into that freezing house where my breath came out in clouds, and I sat them both down at the kitchen table. Jason looked miserable, wrapped in 3 blankets, and my mom looked small, smaller than I'd ever seen her. And I pulled out my laptop, opened a fresh spreadsheet, and said, "Here's how this works. I pay for the furnace. Today. But in exchange, you do exactly what I say. No arguments, no excuses." The conditions were simple, and I laid them out like a contract because that's what this was, a transaction, not a reunion. First, every single expense currently in my name gets transferred to theirs within 1 week. Internet, phone plan, subscriptions, everything. I'd give them the account info. They'd take over payments or cancel them. I didn't care which. Second, they create an actual budget. I'd help them set it up, show them how to track expenses, but they'd have to follow it. No more emergencies that were really just poor planning. Third, and this was the big one, Jason gets a real job. Not content creation, not freelance branding. A job with a paycheck, W-2, taxes withheld. I didn't care if it was part-time or entry-level, but he contributes to the household, or he gets out. My mom started to protest, and I held up my hand. "Those are the terms. Take them or freeze." Jason looked like I'd slapped him. "You can't just dictate my career like that. I'm building something. I have followers. I have momentum." I cut him off so fast he choked on his own words. "You have 3,000 followers and no income. You're 26 years old, living rent-free while I bankrolled your hobby for a year. The momentum stops now. You want heat? You want internet? You contribute. Otherwise, you're welcome to build your brand from a shelter." It was harsh. I knew it was harsh. But I was so far past coddling his feelings I couldn't even see them anymore. He'd had 26 years of being protected from reality. It was time reality sent him a bill. My mom tried the soft approach again. "He's trying, Bella. He just needs more time." And I snapped. I gave him time. I gave him money. I gave him everything. And he gave me nothing. That's over. I transferred $1,800 that night. Watched the HVAC guy fix the furnace. Watched the house warm up. Watched my mom cry with relief and Jason retreat to his room without a word. And before I left, I set them up with a budgeting app, linked their accounts, showed them how to categorize expenses. My mom looked at the numbers, really looked at them for the first time, and her face went pale. I didn't realize we were spending this much. Of course she didn't, because I'd been covering the overflow, silently absorbing every gap, making their irresponsibility invisible. Now you know, I said, and now you fix it. I'll check in next month. If Jason doesn't have a job by then, I'm done. Completely. No more bailouts, no more help. You're on your own. I walked out of that house at 10 p.m., exhausted and strangely empty. I didn't feel good about helping them. I didn't feel righteous or kind. I just felt tired. Tired of being the adult. Tired of being the solution. Tired of carrying people who refused to carry themselves. But I'd drawn the line. I'd set the boundary. And as I drove back to my studio, heat blasting, music loud, I made myself a promise. This was the last time I'd save them from consequences they'd earned. They could change or they could collapse. But either way, it wouldn't be my problem anymore. I'd loved them by setting myself on fire for years. Now I was teaching them what it felt like to be cold. And maybe, just maybe, they'd finally learn to light their own damn match. I went back the following Saturday. Not because I wanted to, but because I'd made a deal, and I keep my word even when other people don't. The house felt different, quieter, colder in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. My mom had the budget app open on her laptop when I arrived, and Jason was sitting at the table in a button-down shirt I'd never seen before. He looked uncomfortable. Good. I sat down, pulled out my own laptop and said, "Show me what you've got." For the next 2 hours, we went through every line item, every expense, every bill. I wasn't gentle about it. When my mom tried to justify the $240 they'd spent on takeout in 1 week, I just stared at her until she looked away. "That's groceries for a month," I said. "Figure it out." The math was brutal, but honest. After I removed myself from the equation, my internet subsidy, my subscription coverage, my random Venmos, they were short about $600 a month. Not catastrophic, but enough to matter, enough to force choices. I walked them through cuts, downgrade the internet, cancel subscriptions they didn't use, meal prep instead of DoorDash, use the bus instead of Uber, basic adult shit that I'd been doing since I was 22 while they coasted on my safety net. My mom kept trying to negotiate, to find loopholes, and I shut it down every time. "No, you don't get to half-ass this. You either follow the budget or you drown. I don't care which, but I'm not jumping in to save you anymore." It was harsh. It needed to be. Then I turned to Jason. "Job?" He shifted in his seat, defensive before he even spoke. "I have some interviews lined up. Retail stuff, maybe a coffee shop." I held up my hand. "I didn't ask what you're thinking about. I asked if you have a job." His jaw tightened. "Not yet." I nodded, opened a new tab, and pulled up Indeed, Craigslist, even the local grocery store's hiring page. "You have until the end of this month. 4 weeks. If you don't have a paycheck by December 1st, you're out of this house. I don't care where you go, but you don't get to live here for free while Mom struggles." My mom started to object, and I cut her off with a look that could have frozen water. "He's an adult. Treat him like one. This is called consequences, and he's 26 years late meeting them." I showed them how to set up auto-pay for bills, how to check balances, how to track spending in real time so they couldn't pretend they didn't know where the money went. I made them practice logging expenses right there at the table, my mom entering her grocery run from yesterday, Jason inputting the gas he'd bought. It felt like teaching toddlers to tie their shoes, and the frustration was suffocating, but I pushed through, because this wasn't about them anymore. This was about me proving to myself that I'd done everything I could before I walked away for good. I gave them the tools. I showed them the path. What they did with it was no longer my responsibility. And that thought felt like oxygen after years of suffocating. Before I left, I sat them both down and said something I'd been holding in for weeks. "I don't hate you. I'm not punishing you for fun. But I'm also not your parent, and I'm not your ATM, and I'm not going to destroy myself so you can stay comfortable. You took advantage of me because I let you, and I take responsibility for that. But it stops now. Completely. If you want a relationship with me going forward, it starts with respect. Real respect. Not thanks for the Venmo respect. I'm talking about valuing my time, my work, my boundaries. If you can't do that, then we don't have anything left to talk about. My mom cried. Jason looked at the floor, and I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked out without waiting for a response. The drive back to Queens felt lighter. Not happy, not victorious, just settled. I'd given them a roadmap to stability and held up a mirror to show them what they'd become. Whether they changed or not wasn't up to me. I'd spent my whole life trying to fix them, trying to be enough, trying to earn the love they gave Jason without him even asking. But I was done earning, done fixing, done setting myself on fire to keep people warm who wouldn't even say thank you while they roasted marshmallows on my burning body. I taught them how to survive without me. Now they'd have to prove they wanted to. And if they didn't, well, that was the most honest answer I could have asked for. 3 months later, I barely recognized my own life. The studio in Queens had gone from empty box to actual home. Plants on the windowsill, art on the walls, a desk setup that didn't hurt my back because nobody had sold my chair for parts. I got a promotion at work, the kind I'd been chasing for 2 years but could never fully commit to because I was always distracted by someone else's crisis. My boss noticed the shift. "You seem different," she said. More focused. I didn't tell her it was because I'd amputated the part of my life that was bleeding me dry. I just smiled and said, "I moved. Fresh start." Fresh didn't even cover it. I felt like I'd been born again. This time without the weight of other people's expectations crushing my chest. My mom started paying me back in November. Small amounts, $100 here, $50 there, transferred with messages like, "Toward what I owe you," that felt like apologies she didn't know how to say out loud. I didn't respond to the messages. Just let the money sit in my account like proof that consequences could actually teach people something. By December, she'd sent back $430 total. It wasn't even close to the $18,600 I'd spent. But it wasn't the money I cared about anymore. It was the acknowledgement. The admission, however small, that what they'd done to me was wrong. That I wasn't crazy. That I wasn't selfish. That I'd been holding up a house that should have stood on its own. And when I let go, they finally had to learn what foundation meant. Jason got a job. I almost didn't believe it when my mom texted me a picture of him in a Starbucks apron, looking miserable but employed. "He starts at 16 hour," she wrote. "It's not much, but it's something." I stared at that photo for a long time. Part of me wanted to feel smug, to gloat, to screenshot it and send it back with, "Told you so." But mostly I just felt sad. Sad that it took me leaving, took the heat breaking, took me drawing a line in the snow for him to do the bare minimum of contributing to his own life. He was 26. This should have happened years ago, but our parents had coddled him, enabled him, sacrificed me on the altar of his comfort. And now we were all paying the price of that betrayal in different ways. The family dinner stopped. I didn't go back for Thanksgiving. Didn't even feel guilty about it. My mom called and asked, voice small, if I'd reconsider, and I said, maybe next year, if things are different. What I meant was, if you've proven you can value me without needing me, if you can see me as a person instead of a solution, if you can sit across from me and not immediately start asking for favors. She didn't push. That alone felt like progress. I spent Thanksgiving with Rachel and her family, eating turkey I didn't cook, and laughing at jokes that didn't have barbs hidden in them. And when I went home that night to my quiet studio, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. There's a difference between being alone and being abandoned, and I'd finally learned which one was which. By January, the calls slowed to once a week. My mom would check in, ask how I was doing, tell me about small changes in the house, Jason contributing to groceries, her picking up extra shifts, them actually following the budget I'd built. She never said, I'm sorry. Not directly, but the changes were the apology, and I accepted them as such. I wasn't ready to forgive, wasn't sure I ever would be, but I was willing to witness their effort. That's all I had left to give. And one night, sitting on my couch with tea and a book, My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "I'm proud of you." I should have said that more. I cried, not because it healed everything, but because it was something. It was small and late and not enough, but it was hers. And maybe that's all justice ever really is. Not revenge, not cruelty, just the truth finally being seen. I learned something in those months that I wish I'd known years ago. Loving your family doesn't mean setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. It doesn't mean shrinking so they can expand, or breaking so they stay whole, or dying so they can live. Real love, the kind that doesn't destroy you, requires boundaries. It requires the word no. It requires walking away when staying means losing yourself. I spent so long thinking that sacrifice was proof of devotion, that the more I gave up, the more I loved them. But all I'd really done was teach them that I was disposable, that my needs didn't matter, that I'd always come back no matter how badly they hurt me. And the day I stopped teaching that lesson, that's the day I started getting my dignity back. That's the day the revenge turned into something better, reclaiming my self-worth. And if you're reading this, if you're the responsible one in your family, the one everyone leans on, the one who's tired of holding up people who never hold you, ask yourself, what would happen if you let go? Maybe they'd fall. Maybe they'd learn to stand. But either way, you'd finally be free. And isn't that what you deserve? So that's my story. The girl who got kicked out at 15 and turned that rejection into rocket fuel. The daughter who learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't screaming or fighting back. It's becoming so undeniably successful that your absence speaks louder than words ever could. But here's what I really want to know. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you? Maybe it wasn't as dramatic as being thrown out in a storm, but maybe it was something quieter. Being overlooked, being blamed, being treated like you didn't matter. How did you handle it? Did you fight back or did you walk away? And more importantly, do you think my mom ever really understood what she lost that night? Or are some people just incapable of seeing their own damage? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me about a time someone underestimated you and lived to regret it. Tell me about the moment you realized you deserved better. Or tell me if you think I went too far. If there's a line between justice and revenge that I crossed. I want to hear it all. The messy, the painful, the triumphant. Because these stories, they matter. They connect us. They remind us we're not alone in the fight to reclaim our dignity and self-worth. And if this resonated with you, if you felt something while reading this, do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Because I've got more stories like this. Stories about family drama, betrayal, karma coming full circle, and people finally getting the payback they deserve. Real stories. Raw stories. The kind that make you feel less alone in your own struggles. Let's keep this conversation going. I'll see you in the next one.